The Stage Door Show, celebrating the independent artist. Hosted by Dave Hondel.
Hey, this is Justin Emord from Love in a Third Eight, and you're listening to Dave Hondel with The Stage Door Show.
Hi everybody, welcome to the Stage Door Show tonight. This is Dave Hondel. I am super excited tonight because we have Justin Emord from the band Love in a 38, an LA-based hard rock band that is taking the world by storm right now with their music. Let's bring him in right now. Justin, how you doing?
Doing good. Thanks for having me.
Man, I'm so excited to have you on. You know, not only are you the bassist for that rock band Love in a 38, but you're also a music advocate for education, which it really hits home with me. You know, I have a son that's under the autism spectrum, and music and theater and the arts really helped him get through a lot of tough times in his life. And so I have a great respect for the kind of work that you guys do. So I just want to kind of start with that, if you don't mind. You know, I know you have a lot of organizations that you work with. So let's talk about some of those organizations right now.
Yeah, sure. So I've been working with the NAMM Foundation. For those that don't know, NAMM is a music trade organization. They have a big trade show every year out here in Anaheim, and then they have a summer show out in Nashville. And they've been doing the music education game for a very long time. And it's great. They have a board of directors that's, you know, a bunch of different people from Taylor Guitars, Yamaha Music, a bunch of people like that. And they're all just really passionate people about music education and funding and making sure that the schools across the country have the resources and everything they need to be able to have programs in their schools. Because obviously it's really important for the whole music industry for kids to be educated, and, you know, whether it's just a hobby or something that, you know, someone like me had a music program in school and then that led to a career. So music education overall is just really, really important for the different avenues it could open up for people.
Do you see, you know, I know it probably varies from, you know, cities and states to states, but, you know, do you see, you know, where budgets have to get cut? I mean, a lot of times, and I've talked about this on several of my podcasts, but unfortunately, you know, arts education, music education is one of the first to get cut out of the schools. And, you know, they're typically, sports would be the last thing to get cut, but music education, you know, unfortunately gets cut a lot. And have you seen a shift in that? Has it gotten to the point where it needs more advocacy groups like you or people like you to kind of push that, or do you find it's getting better out there in our schools and you know, our clubs out there that are into music?
So the thing that's really a blessing for me with groups like NAMM, NAMM is an international organization, and their grassroots music education program they have, their initiative, is obviously solely based here in the United States. And with so many different companies based in different cities and different states, we have representation for a lot of different states. And so we have different trips that we take each year. I've been to Sacramento every spring for the past 4 years, except for this year because of the whole pandemic. But I've also been to Washington, D.C. to do the same type of advocacy work at the federal level. And it definitely varies depending on what state you're in. Obviously, a state like California that has so much of its economy based in entertainment, all the politicians, they get it, they know. So conversations, even at the federal level, are usually fairly simple and easy and straightforward because they understand just the economic impact that kids learning music and venturing into those career paths when they're older does for the state. Some states, maybe in the Midwest, I've heard from other people that, you know, maybe like Wisconsin or Indiana, people over there aren't as keen on that. So there's definitely certain states that require more work and more effort for educating our elected officials to let them know what the problem is and just how important music education is for a well-rounded education to help a kid learn discipline, learn overcoming challenges, obstacles, social interactions, all those things that take place in a music room really do have larger ripple effects in someone's life, in their quality of life in the future. So, there's certain states that have more of an uphill battle than others. Obviously, being in Los Angeles, my representatives know it. So conversations with them are usually very low-key, very mellow. Like I said, I've been doing this for a couple of years, so the politicians know me when I come into the room, because I'm sure you can imagine there's not a lot of long-haired dudes with nose rings going into the state capitol. So when they see me, they're like, oh, it's the music education guy.
Yeah, I mean, David Byrne from Talking Heads, recently did an interview where not only everything that you mentioned so eloquently is true, but also besides all that, test scores are usually higher with kids that are in the arts or music because of the type of I guess parts of their brain that they use to learn music and notes and that, all that type of thing. So, test scores, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, actually are higher with kids that are in the arts.
Oh, absolutely. They're absolutely higher. You figure, there's quarter notes, eighth notes, 16th notes. There's a lot of math, time signatures. There's a lot of math going on in music. So when you have to take SATs or things like that, your brain's already like in that realm. So yeah, there's totally like so many different studies that have been done on exactly that. And that's usually the type of material that we bring to Washington or to Sacramento to let people know just how important it is for kids to have that experience and exposure. Yeah,
no, that's great. And, kudos to you and all of your colleagues that do that. We need more people like you out there fighting for, rights or for the arts and the schools. And, and even now with the pandemic, a lot of schooling is done online, and that's one thing that can be done online, music lessons and art, that type of thing. So that's great. So, keep up the good work on that.
Sports are usually the forefront of extracurricular activities with schools. But, got to keep 6 feet away from each other. So, football, baseball, volleyball, any of those sports that you have in school, those are kind of obsolete right now. So what we're really hoping is that while sports can't be a thing, I mean, even at the professional level, NBA, MLB, like everything's shut down right now. But it's not as hard to put kids 6 feet away in an auditorium with their instruments and play. So we're really hoping that this pandemic, as much of an uphill battle as it's going to be, especially when we go back next year for our fly-ins in DC and Sacramento, it is going to be an uphill battle because schools are definitely getting cut right now with the pandemic. But we're hoping that in like this whole world that we're in right now currently with all the shutdowns and stuff, that when school resumes next year, that there might be an increase in funding because sports can't really exist in the world we're in right now, but music and art can thrive.
Absolutely. No, well said. Well said. How did your interest start in music? How old were you, I guess, when you started, getting interested in playing an instrument? And then also, when did you start becoming interested in playing the bass?
Sure. So I had a couple of swing and misses when I was a kid. I did like the Yamaha School of Music thing when I was maybe 4 or 5, the big purple book. And I can still remember having a very competent understanding of music. Like I could read music and play, but the passion wasn't there because I was just too young. I wanted to play Super Mario and, go outside and play sports and, do other things. So my interest wasn't really with music. But I tried piano, and then I lived in a condo when I was a kid. So there was a guy in the building that was a guitar player and a guitar teacher. So my parents got me this 3/4 size nylon string acoustic, and he taught me that. And again, I understood how to play. But it wasn't until my school got a music teacher in 4th grade, Judy Talby. My parents pulled me out of recess, put me into music, like, you're doing this. So I had a very different way and introduction into music. Like, I was the one fighting my parents not to play because I didn't want to. I wanted to play kickball and be out in recess. But my parents were like, no, like sports, music, like it's all part of being a kid. Like, you got to do this. So they put me in music lessons. And the 3rd time around, it stuck, and it stuck hard. So I immediately joined the band. So I was doing concert music, and I basically did that from 4th grade until 12th grade. And throughout that, I learned guitar in 7th grade. I picked up guitar, and then a couple years later is when I picked up bass. So I think I was probably around 11th grade that I actually picked up a bass, and that was kind of out of necessity. There was a bass player at school, and she didn't really know how to read music, but there was a lot of chord charts, so she was just going from like a G to a D to a B. And because I had already started on piano, my left hand was already doing some stuff while I was like comping with chords on my right. So I started kind of writing her bass lines to make things more interesting. And finally I was like, you know what? No, like I'm taking this. So I kind of just like committed a mutiny in high school and took over the bass position. And at that point I was already kind of starting to write my own music. And that was actually because I saw the Trans-Siberian Orchestra at Madison Square Garden. And I just, you know, I grew up in the 90s. So it was, you know, especially, I was born in 87. So by the time I was like aware of what music was, like it was a lot of, you know, the boy bands of the 90s. I was like, this is garbage. My dad was really into classic rock. So he always had the classic rock station on when we were driving around taking me to school. And I heard the Beatles one day. It was Twist and Shout. And I was just like, whoa, like, what's this? He's like, do you like the Beatles? I was like, is this the Beatles? He's like, yeah. I was like, I like the Beatles. Show me more of this. And, you know, he had the vinyls, so we pulled them out and showed me more. And that kind of, like, edged me towards classic rock, the 60s and 70s stuff. But growing up in the 90s, there wasn't, like, much theatrics or real musicianship going on. So when I found Trans-Siberian Orchestra, I was just like, what is this? Like, the violin player has like a flamethrower, fire is turning green. Like, I was just like, I don't know what's going on. It was such a sensory overload for a high schooler, just to see all that pyro and the scissor lifts and all this stuff going on. And then obviously the musicians were just incredible guys too. Alex Skolnick from Testament was playing guitar with them on that tour. So it was just like, wait, the guy from Testament is in this band? Like, this is so much cooler than it even was. And so I just doubled down on music when I got home from New York that year and basically just started writing my own music. And then shortly after that is when I actually picked up the bass. So it was kind of already a necessity because I just couldn't find the right players to actually put something together in high school, like, you know, the high school garage band that everyone has. I didn't have that luxury because I couldn't find people that were into the oldies. So I kind of just had to forge my own path on my own. And so when I picked up a bass, I was like, oh, this is perfect. I need a bass player, and now I'm my own. And shortly after I got out of high school, I started trying to like get bands together and like gig and, you know, play the Viper Room, the Key Club when that was around. And I still couldn't find guys because I was still like in the mindset that I was a guitar player. And then I started putting out a couple of ads that I was a bass player, and it was like, you know, your relationship status on Facebook changing from in a relationship to single. It was just like the floodgates open. It was like, okay, too many dudes, too many guys, one at a time. Let me see what you're all about. So it was kind of like a move that I made for survival, and I just really haven't looked back since.
Yeah, I mean, you know, and just talk about, you know, talking about forming bands. I mean, Love in a 38, you know, from what I understand, you guys all came from other parts of the country and kind of converged on LA and formed this band. And, you know, talk about that. And now, I mean, just the relationship you guys all have. I mean, you guys are really blowing up. So talk about that formation of Love in a 38.
Yeah, so I am actually second generation Love in a 38. There was an original bass player before me. His name was Daniel. And the band was actually put together by this guy, Krishna. He was the original guitar player, and Danny, who was our original drummer. The two of them got together, and they were both from Northern California. They came to LA, you know, following the path of countless bands. And they kind of just started putting out ads. MySpace was a thing back then. They came across, countless guys that have actually auditioned for the position of singer in Love in a 38. So it's kind of funny to see like the rogues gallery of who might have been. But they found Ryan, and they quickly bonded and forged their own little thing. They found Daniel, and there was even a second guitar player at one point in the band early on. But they all kind of had this passion and love for hard rock and guitar heroes. So they kind of started forging this sound of like a modern take on the guitar heroes of the 70s. So there was a lot of AC/DC and Guns N' Roses influence in the early days. And it kind of evolved into the same DNA nowadays. We're just a little bit more on the bluesy side of things. There's a lot more Rolling Stones and Aerosmith influence than, maybe some of the harder, faster, driving type of songs that we had back on like the first EP when like Rock and Lola was a thing. But we ended up finding our new, he's been in the band for 8 years. Domo actually came from another band that actually used to play with Love in the 38 back in the day. So when our guitar player quit, he came in just because we always did shows with him. He was actually at my first show before he joined because he had a night off from his band, and they were friends with Love in the 38. So he was kind of always around the band because we were just friends and did shows together. So we pulled him from that band, and yeah, that's pretty much been the story. I'm actually the one that's from Los Angeles, that lives in Los Angeles. I found 2 more that are from Los Angeles, so I know there's like 10 more people in LA that I need to find. And then I found everyone that lives in LA that was actually born here.
I was going to say, yeah, because, I lived in Florida for 8 years, and I don't think anybody ever was, anybody I knew was actually from Florida. I think LA is the same thing. So, yeah, it's a very transient state.
It is.
The other thing I was going to ask you, we kind of talked about this before we went on the air, but, as far as indie bands go, being an independent artist of any kind, and that's what we promote on our show, it's, obviously it's a challenge to make it in the industry when you do it yourself. But you guys have kind of proven that you can do it as an indie band, and it's a real inspiration, I think, for our listeners. So kind of talk about that, and talk about, I would like to talk about the business end of music, and being a good marketer, a good spokesperson, a good ambassador for not only for your band but also for the genre of music that you're representing, and kind of talk about the business end of things, and what you guys do to kind of promote yourself, and maybe words of advice for some of our listeners out there.
All right, well, the first piece of advice I would give is that there's no substitution for a good hustle. No one's going to hustle harder for you than yourself, so keep going until you get the right deal. We've been offered countless record deals, and they've just all been wrong. We would be bankrupt within a month of signing any of these deals. We would take on all the risk, and the label would take on all the reward. And that's just not worth it. That's not the type of deal you want to sign. You want your label, your agent, your manager, all those people around you, they need to be in your corner. And if they're not from the get-go, they never will be. Which is why we stay DIY. We could have signed our lives away, but we'd probably all be homeless living on a street because we would be in debt to whoever it was, because they just wanted another notch on their belt, and we just weren't going to be that. We know our worth. We know what our music's like. We know what people feel when they hear our music or they see us live, and we're just not going to sell ourselves short just to be signed. That's not enough these days. So unless you're in our corner, we're not going to sign. We're not going to just sign. So that's the first piece of advice I would give. Second, you got to divide and conquer. There's a lot of responsibilities when you're a DIY band, whether it's social media, email blasts for your newsletter, sponsorships, booking shows. There's a lot of stuff that falls on an artist when you're trying to do that. So dividing and conquering, figuring out where people's strengths are, and assigning them roles. It's a small business, so there's an owner, there's all these other cogs that fit together to make the engine run. And so you just got to put all the right gears in place to get that engine running.
Yeah, that's well said. And I think it can go back to even the Goo Goo Dolls in the 90s, where they were multi-platinum, and they were on tour, and they were basically living out of their cars because of the deal they signed. So I think it's a very I think that's great advice, and everybody that's listening should listen to that, because don't sign a bad deal. Don't sign a deal just because they can make you famous. Being famous doesn't pay your bills, and
exactly.
Be an independent artist, right? And so to be an independent artist, it's okay to be a dependent artist. Think about now where the streaming that even when you were coming up, and you said you were in the 90s, you were kind of raised in the 90s. And back then you had maybe MySpace, which we talked about, but it's nothing like today where you have Spotify and Apple Music and everything else that you can put your music on and it streams to the world, and it's just a matter of how you market yourself. And I think that, people can be DIY, bands. It's just a matter of how you're going to market yourself, and you do it the right way. I think it's limitless, really, where you can go with it, right?
Yeah, and for us, like, we've always just been a very rock and roll band. Like, we don't try and beat around the bush and be like, no, like, we're an alt band. Like, we're rock and roll. Like, through and through, we are rock and roll, and that's a flag we've always carried, and that goes a long way with people. Like, when you're just real and authentic with people, like, you don't hide who you are, people latch onto that because they see how real it is. We all love the music that we write and play, and the music we listen to that gets transferred into the stuff that we write. So I think that comes across, and that's helped give us the success that we've had. Rock and roll, I mean, even like metal fans, there's just something so raw about a high energy show where there's just like passion being sweat and bled on the stage. And when that gets pushed out to an audience and they take it, and they throw it right back at you, there's just this cyclical feeding and feasting of energy between audience and band, and there's nothing like that. EDM doesn't really have that. Like, people go to EDM shows, and it's a different vibe, and the rawness of real instruments and real musicians on the stage giving it 110% for an hour 45. Arena shows that are 2-3 hours long. There's just something special about that, and no matter what genre is popular now, rock and roll can't die because the fans won't let it.
Yeah, and with the pandemic, things are going to change, obviously, when things get back to quote unquote normal, which I don't think it ever will be. But if we get anything near that, when we go back to shows again, I mean, do you anticipate a change in how that's going to look, with everything that's going on right now? I mean, have you guys kind of discussed that, or just into the industry as a whole, do you think it's going to change?
Yeah, it's tough because we don't really know when the end is going to be, when venues are going to reopen. I'm a big sports guy, Yankees all the way, Bronx Bombers, and we've been following what's been going on with the MLB because they're trying to figure out how they're going to reopen and get their teams back on the field. And what I've been hearing is, there's no spitting, there's no shouting, there's no yelling, because they just don't want anything transferred from a mouth any further than normal breathing would allow. So it's going to be weird to see what a concert experience is going to be like. The one good thing that we have going on right now is because technology is what it is. There's tons of bands out there. I know the singer of Trivium, Matt, he Twitch streams from his studio like any day that he's not on tour. So there's some bands that just aren't really even changing what they're doing because they've already been set up to do, live streams and, hangouts with their fans, because that's just a way that they do things. They like to play video games. So, they got Twitch accounts and stuff. We've been doing tons of live streams, whether it's just a hangout to talk to people, let them know that we still exist. Ryan, our singer, he actually went to a studio and did this thing because there's a group called Locked In Live here in Los Angeles, and they've been broadcasting from the studio that they built with like this giant LED screen. So they've been trying to do like in-house concerts to give bands that are local. I mean, even artists, they've had DJs, they've had singer-songwriters go in. So we're also really fortunate that things have happened in a time like this, where there's still some survivability, where bands can still create, they can still broadcast to their fans, so that there's still some type of interaction. And I think it's also not only important for the artist, but I think it's also important for just the community as a whole. When you can't go to a movie theater and you can't really go out for a walk more than 20 minutes, beaches are closed and everything else is gone, it's good that bands can be there to be a source of entertainment and de-stressing and just give people an escape for, Instagram has an hour bracket before they kick you off the live stream. So like for an hour, someone can just sit and watch a band and just get immersed in the music and, forget about the virus for an hour. So I think that's really important that people be able to have that outlet for their creativity and also for the the therapeutic aspect of music for someone to listen in and watch a live stream.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you. And, it's like it's allowing people to be more creative. And, I think that this pandemic, as bad as it is, obviously there's really not much good at all. But what good can come of this is people being creative, or creative people being more creative about their art. And like you said, there's so many different ways that people can push their music out or their art out, and through all the different formats. So I think you're right. I think we all need that. Whether it's a comedian, doing a set on, Facebook Live, or whether it's, a musician playing the guitar, putting something out, or a singer. I think that it's a wonderful thing to be able to still perform in, the day and age when there's social media and there's, Facebook Live and anything else people want to put stuff out. So I think you're absolutely right. And we all do need that. Talking about some of your songs, I know that I'm a big fan, to be honest with you. I since I started looking at your stuff a few weeks ago, I've become a huge fan, and I'm pushing your stuff out to a lot of my friends that are hard rock fans like myself. But the video, Oh My God, was amazing. Rock and Lola, Hold On. Talk about some of your favorite songs that you like to play with the band and when you're performing.
Oh man, that's a tough one. I feel like honestly it's such a lame answer. Like any set that we do, it doesn't matter. Like we were in Canada last summer. We played 3-hour sets, and wow. I didn't have like a 3-minute section of any set where it's like, whatever. Like I enjoy the music we play and the music we write. So like I'm honestly happy playing anything in our set. We got some really cool stuff coming out soon that we were actually recording right before the pandemic happened. So we've been going over mixes and stuff during this time. I really like some of the new stuff we've got. It's really just bluesy, stomping, George Thorogood on steroids type of stuff, where it's just like, it's music that you want to drink or fight to, that's kind of like where it is. Like these songs belong in bars everywhere. But honestly, just any of the stuff we write just got a really fun energy that just, it makes you want to move.
It's all amazing, and that's kind of up my alley anyway. I grew up in, you grew up in the 90s, I grew up in the 80s, but I grew up on, hard rock, and we just recently had Joel Hoekstra on, and he's with Whitesnake, but I was a huge Whitesnake fan growing up, so the fact that, yeah, man, it's Trans-Siberian Orchestra. He's been with everybody. He was with Night Ranger for several years as well, and I just grew up listening to all those bands and, just Bon Jovi and everything, so anyway, I really enjoyed hard rock music. So when I started listening to your stuff, like you said, you do have a little bit of a Rolling Stones, Aerosmith kind of vibe, and I love that because I'm a huge fan of both those bands as well. And matter of fact, I was at Avatar Studios in New York City. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but it's right in Midtown. And right before I was there doing a session, I was doing a music video for an artist. And right before we were there, Mick Jagger had just left the soundboard. They just left their session before we got in, and I was just like, I can't believe I'm sitting at this soundboard right now. With that, awesome. Mick Jagger was just mixing something. It was just amazing. So yeah, no, I'm a huge fan, like I said, of your music, and I implore everybody to check out Love in a 38 because the music is amazing. Justin, you're an amazing bass player. And let's talk about your social media. How can people find you on social media?
Yeah, so I can actually make it even easier than that. If you go to our official website, which is loveanda38music.com, it has hyperlinks to everything. So if you're more of a Facebook person, it's got a hyperlink to our Facebook page. If you like Twitter or Instagram, our links are right there as well. And you can stream and purchase our music off of the homepage as well. So it's the one-stop shop for everything.
Does it have update? You said you have some new music coming out. Are there updates on your website as well when people can find that?
Yeah, when we get everything set and figure out our release dates and everything, we will be updating. We'll update on all of our social media pages, but we'll also put a little splash image on the homepage to let people know when to expect our new music.
That's awesome. And, Justin, I can't thank you enough for joining my show tonight. And, again, what you do for music education is amazing. Just kudos to you and all of your colleagues that fight for music education out there. Like I said, it's very close to home with me. And, anything I can do on my show to push anything that you're doing, please let me know. Because like I said, that's what we're all about is pushing the indie artists and also music education. So anything I can do on my end, I'm happy to do that.
I appreciate that very much.
All right, Justin. Well, I hope you have, stay safe out there in LA, and I can't wait to hear your new music. And again, thank you for joining my show tonight.
Thank you. We'll talk soon.